Hi, teachers. If you're watching this video from Warsaw Elementary in Duplin County, you know who I am. And if you're watching this as a teacher at another school who's using this presentation, just to let you know, I'm Kelly Batts. I'm an elementary instructional coach from NCDPI. And we're here today to talk about preparing students to be great writers. Um, I want to share with you three of the book resources that I use to get this information together for you today. One of them is called The Core Six, and it's written by Harvey Silver and Thomas Dewing and Matthew Perini. The front cover looks like this. Um, it has essential strategies for achieving excellence with the Common Core, and there's a portion in it that is devoted to writing. The second resource I want to share with you is Teaching for Comprehension, Comprehending and Fluency, and it is a Heinemann publication by Fontes and Pinnell, and it talks about thinking, talking, and writing about reading for kindergarten through 8th grade. It's a big, thick book. It's a great resource, chocked full of strategies and information about the link between reading and writing and speaking and listening. And finally, one of my very favorites is Reading and Writing Genre with Purpose in K-8 Classrooms. And it's written by Nell Duke and her colleagues. The front cover of it looks like this. Nell Duke is a professor and researcher out of Michigan, and the co-authors on this book are practicing classroom teachers. And this is a pretty hot off the press book. It has a 2012 copyright on it, and it's an excellent resource as well. So a lot of the information that you'll see in this presentation today was taken from those three resources. What you're going to need today is your ELA standards um, for your grade level. Plus, if you have the progressions document that shows the ELA standards for the grade level before and after the grade level that you teach, that would be fantastic. Unless you're a kindergarten or fifth grade teacher, kindergarten teachers obviously won't have the standards before their grade level. And fifth grade teachers, I'm going to be asking you to, instead of look at sixth grade standards, I'm going to be asking you today to think about the anchor standards that your ELA standards are tied to. The unpacked content works best for that, but if you don't have access to the unpacked content, if you've just got the standards, that'll be okay. You're going to want a highlighter and probably a pen or a pencil to take some notes. I do want to let you know though that everything that's in the PowerPoint presentation in this video will be either posted or sent to you. So if you see something that's on the screen, don't feel like you need to rush to jot that down. All of that will be given to you at a later time if you need it. So let's go ahead and get started. Those of you who have done or been through a workshop or presentation with me before know that I like to do expected outcomes at the beginning, and I like to do them in a know, understand, and do format. So for our time together today, what I want you to come away with knowing is the shift in writing expectations with the implementation of our new North Carolina Standard Course of Study. I also want you to be able to name the types of writing that are expected at your grade level. We're going to be talking today about how students need to have a variety of audiences and purposes to write towards, but it's important that we know exactly what the expectations are at our grade level so that we're not spending an enormous amount of time teaching to standards that our grade level is not responsible for. So we're going to be taking a look at those in just a little bit. What I want you to understand by the time we finish today is that students need to write for a range of purposes and audiences, and this is something that Nell Duke in her book, Reading and Writing Genre with Purpose, talks a lot about, is that giving kids authentic purposes and audiences to write for really makes a difference in their learning. I also want you to understand that assignments in writing need to be aligned to the outcomes expected in grade level standards. And that seems like common sense, but I really want us to take a look at specifically what, at your grade level, what the students are responsible for accomplishing. And make sure that when we ask kids to write, that we're trying as much as possible to align our tasks to those things that they're going to be expected to be able to do by the time they finish your particular grade level. There's a lot of reasons for that. Since we have anchor standards across K-12, they've got to be able to master that before they go on to the next grade level, or there are going to be gaps in their learning, and that next grade teacher is going to have a difficult time closing that gap if the students aren't solid in it before that. But it also will help us not to waste time on things that they don't necessarily need to be doing. And a final reason would be because we want to make sure that all of the kids are meeting grade level standards and that we're not making it too easy. A lack of rigor is not going to be helpful for students either. And finally, our do section, we've got 3 things I want us to actually do today. One of those is analyze writing assignments, some that I've created, for grade level appropriateness and alignment to the standard. So I'm going to be asking you later in the presentation to look at 2 different writing assignments for your grade level or your grade band, and to think about the difference in those writing assignments and what each of them does or doesn't accomplish for the grade level that you're responsible for, considering the standards that you know that that the students have to master. A second thing that I'm going to have you do today is to rewrite a recent reading or writing assignment that you have given to students, to make sure that it aligns better with grade level standards. And then finally, none of this will work well if we don't have a plan for how to include writing in our core instruction. So we're going to be taking a few minutes today to think with your grade level or other teachers about how to develop a plan to include more writing, or how to, if you've already included more writing, maybe if you need to modify that plan based on what you see or hear today. Okay? So let's start first with the shifts in writing expectations. Um, in the past, our standards treated writing as a separate subject or skill, and while we do have separate writing standards now in our new standard course of study based on Common Core, there's a lot of writing that should be embedded in what we're already doing in our other content areas, reading in particular, but also across other subject areas. And in the past, our past standards, students were expected to write text that required low information, or it was based on their background knowledge. So we saw a lot of writing assignments where students were asked to write about their feelings about something, or something that they already knew a lot about. And so there wasn't really new learning that necessarily took place. But with our new standards, there is this greater emphasis on the use of evidence in our writing. So it's not enough that students just tell us their opinion or their feelings about something. They have to have evidence from things that they've read or things that they've studied to back up their ideas. Also, with the new standards, there's an emphasis shifting away from writing stories to writing about ideas in text. So even though we do have narrative as a genre that students are responsible for writing, there's not as much of an emphasis on that as there has been in the past. The emphasis now is to writing about what the author is saying in the stories that we read, or the text that we read if it's informational text. And so the implications for that for instruction is that writing is going to need to be more closely integrated with reading comprehension instruction. I've already talked to many of you at Warsaw, at least, about how this can happen and how this needs to be so tightly integrated. So while you may be doing some separate writing lessons, and I'm going to encourage you to do that, you'll see that later in the presentation as well, about how you'll teach students specifically how to write towards a particular genre, you want it to be as closely integrated with reading comprehension instruction as possible. And I shouldn't limit that to reading comprehension instruction. It should also be in the content areas too. Um, the amount of writing about what students read will need to increase. And finally, you see this greater emphasis on synthesis of information and critical essays than we had in the past. Real briefly, I want to just make sure that we look at that word synthesis, because synthesis is all about how students change their thinking over time. So what you might find as far as a writing expectation would be that students would write what they currently know or understand about a particular topic, or about a story, or about characters, or if it's in science, it might be about weather, or if it's in math, it may be about fractions. And then as they learn a little bit more, they write again to show how their thinking or their understanding has changed. And then at the end of a sequence of lessons, they may write again. And there's no limit on the number of times that they write, but the point is for them to continually write to show how their thinking has changed over time. And so synthesis has to do with a change in your thinking over time. So there's a greater emphasis on this type of writing of information, and also critical essays, as opposed to things like story writing, which we focused heavily on in the past. So let's talk about those grade level expectations. I want you to take out your ELA standards for your grade level. And what I'd like for you to do for the next 5 minutes or so is to examine the standards for your grade level, and I'd like for you to annotate, and that means to highlight or underline or make notes about it, the genres of writing that are required for your grade level. You can find those in your writing standards for ELA, but also the purposes for writing in response to reading. So in other words, in your ELA standards, you may see some standards that would ask students to explain something, or define something, or defend something. And while it doesn't specifically say writing, that may be indeed one of the products that they would have to do. And so that is an implication for writing instruction that would have to take place, because they may be able to do those things orally, but they would need to be taught how to do them if they're asked to write them. So I want you to look through all of those ELA standards, and then to think about the types of writing that are required. After you've done that for about 5 minutes, we're going to be sharing that out, but I also want you to note if and how the expectations change from the grade level below you to the grade level that's above you. And if you're a kindergarten teacher, I'd like for you to just think about the skills that students come to school with in terms of writing, as the grade level before piece. And if you're a 5th grade teacher, instead of looking at 6th grade standards today, I want you to look at the anchor standard that your ELA standards are tied to. That's those common K through 12 anchor standards, so that you can think about where all of this elementary instruction is leading towards. Okay, so take the next 5 minutes or so to talk with a partner and to do this work with your standards, and then your facilitator will give you about 5 minutes to share out what your findings were. Okay?